Mejda, or second elder brother, was how Yogananda's brothers and sisters addressed him. His elders called him Mukan or Moko, and he was a family of 4 brothers and 4 sisters. Ananta, Roma, Uma, Nalini, Sanandalala, and Purnamoyi. Mejda's mother and father were very saintly people. They had to be, in order to bear the child Yogananda. Mukunda's grandfather was a great man as well, and he was a school teacher. And he had a very deep fondness for a little girl who lived in their neighborhood. And one day this little girl fell very ill, but grandfather tended to her with medicine and worked very hard to nurse her back to health. But one day the little girl had a nightmare, and she threw her arms around grandfather, hoping that his loving touch would comfort her. But grandfather, being who he was, could not resist, so he hugged her back. And sadly, grandfather caught the little girl's illness and very soon died. But this left Mukunda's father, Bhagabati Ghosh, with the difficult responsibility of caring for his widowed mother and younger brothers and sisters, because now he was to take grandfather's role. While still a young boy and growing up in his family, he was so poor that Bhagabati couldn't even purchase school books. He borrowed books from teachers and classmates, and he copied them by hand onto leaves. Even with this difficult task, he achieved the highest of scholastic achievements. And from time to time, an English newspaper found its way into the village. And this is where Mukunda's father taught himself English.
The Governor General was in town.
Many were amazed at how perfectly he had mastered the foreign language. At one time, he had even committed to memory the entire English dictionary, and when asked, he could give the definition of any word as well as the number of the page and the location that the word was on that page.
Ethereal, that means heavenly, and that's on page 34 at the bottom left corner.
And because Bhagabati could not obtain money as a loan to further his education, he began to tutor students and to help them with their schoolwork. And he then vowed or promised to help his brothers go through school. And this he did accomplish. Bhagabati went on to make a great success of his life. And later, after he'd married Yogananda's mother, Gyanaprabha Ghosh, he began working as an accountant in the railway. But before that, a friend gave him a tip.
Bhagabati, save some money. You never know when you might need it for some emergency.
So Bhagabati began to save money in case of an emergency. And he did this, and he was later able to provide amply for his family and for an emergency, any emergency that might come up. He was even able to help Yogananda or Mukunda come to America later when he was an adult. And he helped him financially for the first 10 years of Yogananda's time in America. So we owe a lot of gratitude to Bhagabati for helping Yogananda, because if he hadn't, we would not be here today. Now, when Bhagabati worked at the railroad, he had an employee named Abhinash. And one day, Abhinash applied for a week's leave of absence because he had previously taken several days off. Bhagabati was not willing to give it to him. He refused him. Talking this over with Avinash, Bhagavati asked him,
Where are you going?
I go to Benares to see my guru.
So you're trying to acquire piety. Can you tell me what religion really is? Our nation is being ruined in the name of religion. My dear man, there is nothing in it. Don't be a fanatic. If you want to get ahead in life, work, and surely you will profit in the long run.
well, later, Bhagavati felt saddened by the way he treated Avinash. He was not so much sorry for his words, but for his harshness, and he decided to talk with Avinash.
Abhinav, come back.
Later that afternoon, he met Avinash on his way home from the office. The roadway they were on was lined with large, shady trees. And their leafy branches intertwined overhead to form a natural courtyard. Passing beyond the trees, they came upon a large field where waves of rippling grass turned auburn in the flaming rays of the setting sun. And as he spoke, little did he know that Avinash was secretly praying to his guru, Lahiri Mahashaya. Suddenly, a thrill of joy filled their hearts, and both felt an overpowering desire to become one with the beauty that surrounded them. And then, a person of tranquil nature appeared before them a few yards ahead.
He's my guru, Lahiri Mahashaya.
Mukunda's father was silent, motionless, and absorbed in this beauty and grand display of nature. The gentle soul of Lahiri Mahashaya gently scolded Mukunda's father.
Bhagavati, you are too hard on your employee.
And then suddenly, Lahiri Mahashaya disappeared. They'd searched the area, but found no one. Bhagavati was awestruck. He knelt down tenderly and touched Avinash, saying affectionately,
Abhinav, I'll surely grant you leave. And I too want to go to Benares. Will you take me to your guru? He who can appear at will to help his devotee is truly a wonderful being, one with the perceptor of the universe. My wife and I would like to take initiation from him and seek guidance for our sadhana.
And so, Bhagavati and his wife departed for Benares the next evening, accompanied by Avinash to see Lahiri Mahashaya. And they arrived the following morning and found Lahiri Mahashaya in his simple home, and the guru was seated in his drawing room in lotus posture, meditating. They bowed before him. Opening his half-closed eyes, Lahiri Mahashaya looked at Mukunda's father.
Bhagavati Babu, you are too hard on your employee.
Bhagavati hung his head and was thrilled to the very core of his heart. No one had ever chastised him before. Lahiri looked at Mukunda's mother, who was with child, and that child that she was with was who we know of as Mukunda, or Yogananda, as we know of him today. Lahiri Mahashaya initiated Yogananda's mother and father into the great meditation technique of Kriya Yoga. And afterward he said to his mother,
My daughter, by the grace of God, your son will be a prophet. He will show mankind the way to God realization. Through his life and teachings, many people will shrug off the delusions of this world and find salvation. You traveled here by train. Verily you saw the way the engine pulled the cars. In that same manner, your son will draw souls from the ordinary to the divine spheres.
Rameshda's life was linked with that of the great Guru, and the truth of Lahiri Mahashaya's prediction has been shown to all of us.
Yogananda, guide to inner freedom, steal into my heart of hearts, banish my delusions. Sri Yogananda, guide to inner freedom, steal into my heart of hearts, banish my delusions. Sri Yogananda, guide to inner freedom, steal into my heart of hearts, banish my delusions. Sri Yogananda, guide to inner freedom, steal into my heart of hearts, banish my delusions. Sri Yogananda, guide to inner freedom, steal into my heart of hearts, banish my delusions.
The Great Cauliflower Robbery. So Yogananda grew up at 4 Gorpar Road in Benares, India. And when Yogananda was a young man, he found his guru, Swami Sri Yukteswar. Sri Yukteswar Ji was also a student of Lahiri Mahashaya, as were Yogananda's parents. And Sri Yukteswar became the spiritual teacher of Yogananda.
Master, a gift for you.
Yogananda laid 6 huge cauliflowers at the feet of his guru.
I have raised these with the tender care of a mother and planted them myself.
Thank you, Mukunda. Please keep them in your room. I'll need them for a special dinner tomorrow.
Yogananda had just arrived in Puri to spend his college summer with his guru at his east side hermitage on the Bay of Bengal. Yogananda awoke early that morning, refreshed by the sea air.
Come, let us go to the beach.
Yogananda was impressed by how his guru was able to keep up with the youngsters.
When our Western brothers walk, they take great pride in unison. We walk in 2 rows, keeping rhythmic step with each other. Boys go to and fro in a pretty little row. Mukunda, did you remember to lock the back door of the hermitage?
I think so, sir.
No, you forgot.
Sri Yukteswar went on to say that divine contemplation, or meditating, must not be made an excuse for material carelessness. He said,
You have neglected your duty in safeguarding the ashram. You must be punished. Your 6 cauliflowers will soon be 5.
well, Sri Yukteswar told Mukunda to look towards the ashram and observe the road. He told Yogananda that a certain man will arrive there presently and will be the means of his karmic punishment for not locking the ashram. Well, of course, Yogananda thought he was kidding, but sure enough, a moment later, a peasant soon appeared on the road, and he was dancing grotesquely and flinging his arms about with meaningless gestures. Yogananda's eyes were glued to him. He He was paralyzed with curiosity. As the man reached the road where he could vanish from their view, Sri Yukteswar said,
Now he will return.
and the peasant at once changed his direction and made for the rear of the ashram. He crossed over a sandy tract. He entered a building by the back door. Yogananda had left it unlocked. But just as his guru had said, slowly the man came out holding one of Yogananda's prized cauliflowers. Now the man strode along respectably and with the dignity of one who is in possession of something very, very special. Well, Yogananda took off after the peasant, and Yukteswar began laughing. He was shaking from head to foot with laughter.
That poor crazy man, he's been dying for a cauliflower. I thought he should have one of yours. So ill-guarded.
Yogananda then ran to his room, only to find that his watch, his rings, his money, all were lying openly on the blanket of his bed, and they had been left untouched. The peasant had instead crawled underneath Yogananda's bed, where completely hidden from sight was the precious cauliflower. And Yogananda added later that evening,
Master, will you explain what happened?
Sri Yukteswar explained that because of his strong will and his intuition, and because he had meditated for many, many years, was able to place the thought in the peasant's mind to go into the ashram and take the cauliflower. He felt the man's desire for cauliflower, and so he used it as an opportunity to teach Yogananda a lesson about protecting his belongings and about using common sense and locking them up. Yukteswar said, our minds are like radios, and thoughts don't come to us, but rather they are like the waves of a radio. They float in and out of our minds. And we have the choice as to which radio station we want to listen to. Do we want to listen to the thought that tells us to take something that doesn't belong to us, like the cauliflower robber? Go ahead, take it. Or do we want to listen to the voice that reminds us to use our common sense?
You'll get in trouble.
Just turn away.
Boys go to and fro in a pretty little row. Boys go to and fro in a pretty little row. Boys go to and fro in a pretty little row. Boys go to and fro in a pretty little row.
Let's take a few minutes together just to go into the silence, to feel the living presence of God and the Masters, and especially Yogananda Ji this day, in which we honor his birth and life and living presence. Sitting upright behind closed eyes, lifting the gaze to the point between the eyebrows. Visualize a great light there. Out of that light comes the great ones of East and West, and Paramahansa Yogananda in special blessing on this day. For they are one in the great light of God, as are we, and we need only to improve our knowing. Let us rest in that silence, that knowing. Be still and know that we are one.
peace. Amen. Well, good morning, everyone. I realized with the cauliflower lying on the dais here that there are 6 cauliflowers with which you can do the vegetable motif if you don't like if you don't like what I have to say. So I have to be really careful today. Where I come from, when it's someone's birthday, then everyone in the family is told that day to have a happy birthday, because they're all sort of part of one big family. And so I want to say to everyone, happy birthday today. It's all of our birthdays with Yogananda's. For those of you who may not know, Yogananda wrote this great book, Autobiography of a Yogi. It was a great spiritual classic. And he says in the very first sentence of this book that the underpinning, the basis of this book is the eternal search for that relationship between the guru and the disciple. And so I wanted to talk this morning a little bit, just for a few minutes, because this is a family service, so I know we've got a short window here, about the guru. What is a guru? What does that mean? Well, the way Yogananda put it, or one description that he gave that I thought was really helpful, he said that in ancient Greek mythology, they used to have a labyrinth, a maze. Do you know what a labyrinth is, Harsha? Do you know what a labyrinth is? A maze? Do you know, Risha? No? Okay. Well, it's, the way I've seen it, it's either these, tall sort of cement walls or else tall hedges, and they're made in all these strange shapes, and they go all around a big, large area, and they're just wide enough for you to walk through. And so you're walking through this maze, this labyrinth, and when you get into the middle of it, most people get lost, and they can't find their way back. But Theseus said he knew the way to do this. So when it was his turn to go into the labyrinth, he brought a spool of twine, and he unraveled that as he went into the labyrinth. And so when he got into the middle and he had to find his way back, he simply followed the twine back. And Yogananda describes that twine is like our guru. We're sent out by God, and if we take God with us in the form of the guru, then the guru can help guide us back. And he said he doesn't even need to actually be there in the body physically. If we just think about the guru, if we just try to tune into the guru, we will sense where to turn and how to turn in each direction so we can find our way home. And the guru knows how to find our way home because the guru has found his way home, his or her way home already, and they're already free and back with God. And so that twine, Hansel and Gretel, if I remember the fairy tale right, they dropped breadcrumbs, but the animals, the birds ate the bread, right? And they couldn't find their way home. But the twine of the guru is always there. When I was a little girl, I can still remember as clear as if it was today. One night my parents put me to bed, they told me a story, and then they thought I was asleep and they left the room, but I wasn't asleep, and I kept thinking. And I visualized myself as if I was far away, like on the moon, on another planet, and I was looking back on Earth. And Earth was like this ball, And there were all these lights, these points of lights crawling all around the ball, like little ants, points of lights. And I realized, I was only about 6 years old, but I realized that those points of light were us, and that God is like the great light, the big, giant flame of wisdom and love, and that we're little sparks of that light, all connected when we come together in God. And I went to my mother the next morning. I was so excited, and I told her what I had seen. And my family was pretty agnostic, atheist. And she sort of patted me on the head, and she said, "Dear, you don't want to think about things like that." She said, "Great scientists have tried to think about things like that, and great men throughout time, men and women, and they go mad, they go crazy." Well, I'm here to tell you that we do want to think about things like that. We want to think about the important questions, or at least when we do think about them, give ourselves permission to think about them. All the important questions. And be willing to search for the answers. Who am I? Why am I here? Why is this important? And to be willing to be asked those questions also by others, any questions. To be willing to be without fear. Sri Yukteswar, who we just saw, I feel like he was really here this morning. I don't know about you. Sri Yukteswar tells the story that when he was a child, his mother was trying to frighten him and told him about the ghosts in this dark chamber in the house. And he went right to the chamber and he opened the door and he looked inside for that ghost and he didn't see any. He looked fear right in the face. And he said, when you do, it no longer has a hold on you. And when you read that carefully, I thought about that a lot. It doesn't mean it's not there, but it means it no longer has a hold on you if we are willing to face it. So that's my message to you for this year. There's a lot of crazy things going on in that world out there. And there's a lot of people trying to stir up fear. But fear has no place. Have the courage to look fear in the face, to be strong. Yogananda brought priceless teachings to give each and every one of us the ability to know God in our own lives, for ourselves, sitting in the center of our own soul. The kingdom of heaven is within. There is no need to fear. You don't have to fear anything anymore.